Let's rock, man. So guest today, Los Silva, co-founder of Powerhouse Ventures, affiliatemarketing.com, and Dealflow Brokerage. I'm really excited to have Los on because everybody who listens to this, pretty much all anybody wants to do is sell their business.
I love that.
And we have experienced a very stark correction in business valuations over the past, let's say, 12 months. I had Ryan Babinzian on last week, and we were talking about Jolie, his new venture, and he was actually talking about how with Greats, the shoe company that he started and sold to Steve Madden 5 years later, he was talking about all the mistakes he made with Greats that he did not replicate with Jolie, and one of them was he wished he raised $10 million instead of $1 million, like after like month 6 or something, because he was like underfunded, always sold out of his biggest item, and like, you know, did all this stuff wrong. And he's like, but that wasn't even an option right now. No. He's just like the capital available to fund direct consumer ventures in general is just light, right?
People don't look at it like they're not valued like softwares now. They used to, which was crazy, right? Like Allbirds, all these companies had like ridiculous valuations, and now everything's kind of just more like getting and regulating and becoming what it really should be priced at.
And it's what I think Ryan attributed it to was direct consumer was basically they slapped a label on it as a business model. And he's like, it's just a channel.
It's just a channel.
Right. Totally. So yeah, I mean, I think look, I had questions about how you get 360 whatever thousand Instagram followers or whatever else in like platforms and all that. But like, I think everybody's more curious about what you're seeing on the business selling side and valuations and like what's happening right now. Right. So like, let's start there. Like what is happening right now in eComm business brokerage? And if you can like categorize like the size of deals going through also, and like kind of how that's changed in the last 12 months. Cause like, I think that the listeners are going to want to know like, okay, if I had this ballpark valuation metric in my head, like what is it now and what are some comps? So
yeah, I'll talk on both sides,
it over to you.
Right? I'll talk kind of like what I'm seeing on buyers that are buying companies right now and sellers, and kind of like the mentality of sellers, which I think is flawed, and hopefully I can give some insight on both of those things. So it's a great time to sell your business right now, right? The problem is people think that they have the next Uber, and you sell physical products. Slow down, calm down. And that's the truth, right? So like buyers are ready. They've been saving for moments like this, and they're now going out and acquiring brands, either to do roll-ups or to scale out and different things like that. So the money is there. It's available for people, and people are interested in buying. They're smarter, right? They're smarter than other, I'm not going to say the names, but other aggregators that came in before them and just did like non-logical roll-ups, had some guys from Goldman, some analysts that were not marketers or knew direct consumer or different channels, and said, hey, this looks good on valuation, blah, 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 but didn't take into consideration, oh man, we're going to have to invest in this, the average order value, we're going to lose money, this isn't the best deal to get, right? The buyers are a lot smarter than that. And so that is creating an opportunity for them to get things at a smaller, multiple, right? So normal, like back in the day, even not back in the day, but like a couple of years ago, if you had a shit Amazon business, frankly, that sold like trinkets and like spatulas and stuff, but it was doing $5 million because you could do that on just Amazon. You have no other platforms, you have nothing else, and you're probably pulling $1 million EBITDA, let's just say. You could sell that thing for 7 times, and like to some
EBITDA.
Yeah, EBITDA. And to some person that made sense. I never thought that made sense, but people were buying at that clip. Now that buyer is going, okay, well, you just have 60,000 reviews. That's dope. But if Amazon changes, we have nothing. We'll give you 3. And the seller is like, no, it's worth 7. Dude, it's really not, right? Like, let's talk about this. Let's slow that down even. As the seller, you have to think not like what you see on TV and what the whole logic is. If you have $1 million business in EBITDA, right, and it probably might be less, but like let's say you do, you're probably paying yourself $200,000 to $300,000 a year, right? And so you're thinking, oh, this thing is worth 35 million. I want 7 times or 30, like some ridiculous multiple. And someone's going to come in and be like, hey, I'll give you $4 million for this, right? But if you pay yourself $300,000 a year and you're getting, let's just go to 3 million. I'm going to give you 3 million for this. I'm giving you 10 years of your business, right? And it's an e-commerce business, so it's not going to be valued as a software from gross revenue or a subscription food company at like gross revenue, right? That makes no sense. Because when you're buying, like the dumb way that I explained the EBITDA thing to people is, let's say you're a buyer and I'm a seller. And for this scenario, what you're saying is like, man, I want to buy it instead of at 5 at 3 because it's dangerous. I have to allocate money for direct to consumer. I have to allocate money for biz dev and retail. I have to maybe create new SKUs. I'm going to need that as capital to invest. So I can't just give you $5 million. I got to give you 3 and save $2 million so I can make this business work, right? And the other person is thinking conversely, oh, my buddy got this much money a year or 2 ago, so it's worth the same.
Right.
No, it's not. Start thinking about it not as a company. Take it more binary and go, what's best for me right now? Because if you know how to build an e-com business, you can do it again and again and again and again, right? But now you have $2, $3, $4, $5 million to do it with momentum and to make smarter plays and bigger decisions, right? So that's what's happening in the market right now. We see a lot of people in our powerhouse group. We optimize companies for sale, and then our brokerage sells it, right? And a year ago, people were like upset that we bought the brokerage. They're like, oh, we don't want to sell the business. And that alone is weird, right? Because they're like, oh, it's my baby. Listen, e-commerce,
Right.
e-commerce is a savings account. It's not a checking account. You got to get into $1 million+ a month for you to start making the money you would make with a software or with a service business or coaching consulting. You've got to get real money in there. And the more money you make in e-com, oftentimes the more money you need. More people, more products, more SKUs, more everything, right? Like growth. And so it's a savings account. You grow that business. You don't make the most amount of money from it. But then with that opportunity of an exit, you get it all back, right? As opposed to like a service business where like it cash flows. An e-com business isn't going to cash flow, right? And so people have to really start thinking of it like that. And so once I started talking to people about their personal and said, hey, if you're making $300,000-$400,000 a year and I can get you 9 million, 6 million, 7 million bucks, why don't you just take it instead of working on this for 20 more years where algorithms can happen, partnerships can break? Like, take it today. I can get this done in 6 months or 4, and then you got your new thing. You know what I mean? And so now that they started to understand that, we're selling about 50% of the companies in our brokerage. We got about 300 million in businesses that we're trying to sell right now. 50% of them are from the group, and the other ones are a little bit more mature. And these are companies doing on average $2 to $15 million EBITDA, right? We don't work with smaller brands. Like if you're doing 1 to 2 million gross or 100, 200,000 net, that's more of like a flipper, creative financing. We're more pocket boutique. We work with investors and aggregators and things like that have an allotted amount. Like, hey, I got 30 million to spend with you. I have 100 million to spend with you. And so we sell them a few, and then we have the rest. And so we can allocate that capital to the right thing. But people come to us also for due diligence, for decisions. Like, hey, we think we should buy this. I think it's a terrible idea. Look at the average order value. Look at the market. Look at what you'd have to invest. So we also consult with them on that side as well. And we also support the buyer, the seller, by helping them. Like, this is a great idea. Get off your high horse. Get off your ego trip. Make things more binary. This is not your baby. Your wife is your baby. Your human being is your baby. Your dog, you're your baby. Like, take care of you. This business is something that you can just create something different on because you have that skill and now you have the money for it. Does that make sense?
So, dude, I have 3 things popped in my head as you were talking there. So, like, the fact that you can just start another business, like, so the guy who founded Warby Parker, one of the guys, founded Harry's, and the dude's fucking brother-in-law, he had him found Billy, which was just hair, and the guy was not a D2C guy. He was just like a lawyer. And this guy just sat over here and told him what to do. And they sold Billy for like $400 million. It's like this skill of doing this is so real. I see it in myself. Like, my business right now, I share an office with David Rogenmoser from Jarvis. He literally said to himself, he's like, every business that I have started has been exponentially larger than the last.
Logically.
Right? So, like, So yeah, it's this game that you're just getting good at. And I also felt this very strange, like when I started out, there was this romantic idea that I was like doing my life's work, right? In this SaaS company. And like, it was so much more fulfilling than like my trading job, where I was just like getting told what to do and putting a suit on and like showing up at work at 6 in the morning every day. But like, one thing that I have learned about myself is that I cannot predict how I am going to change with my attitude towards what I'm working on. Like even on this one, like I was going to sell it last February and I was done. You know, I was mentally moved on. I was like the semi-retired, like I was going to like look at crypto or whatever. And that got taken away, which was like devastating for like 24 hours. But then I realized the massive opportunity that like laid ahead. And now I'm like, okay, 2 years, I'm fully bought into this. But like, I have no idea how, like we're going to go from we had 6 employees on October 31st. We have 40 now. And we're probably going to have 200 at the end of 2 years from now. I don't know whether I'm going to want to run a 200-person organization.
Right.
Like
you're probably not
like,
the one. You
think,
might have to hire again.
Right, totally. No, well, I've already got a guy who's the one to like build it to that point, because I know I'm not even the one to go from 6 to 200. Now I'm just like doing founder brand content, working on product, you know, providing this like energy to the organization that everybody I think gets a lot out of, right? But like that could not be relevant in, you know what I mean? Like you got to put your adult pants on when you have 200 people. Like, it's like, you got to start doing stuff that's way different. Like maybe I'm not like swearing on podcasts anymore, whatever. You know? Because we'll get like fucking sued.
Dude, I went and bought 3 suits yesterday because we're, you know, the brokerage. I'm not running around in t-shirts with tattoos on. And I know, like, you know, it's 2023, but at the same time, I'm talking to a guy that went to Yale, and I'm going to a power lunch, and he is going to judge me, point blank period. Let's just accept it. But if I'm wearing a suit and the brokerage is doing this, like if I showed up like this, I'm doing the company a disservice, right? And so you've got to understand like the pockets of growth and all these things change. And as entrepreneurs, you change too, right? Like we've seen people. I had a guy who sold a company last year. He's a German guy, sold his company, went to live in Dubai, came back and was like, this is the money that I have. This is what I want to invest in. I said, that's a terrible idea. Took another month. We looked at other brands. He bought a brand instead. And he's like, dude, with the money that I had, I could just buy a brand. And now I'm moving on to something so much more quicker and more efficient, right? And I think you grow. The kind of people that I think are watching this, right, are in the probably $3 to $50 million or more range, right? But the thing that they need to understand is, I always hear this all the time. Someone hits 5 million, the next stop is 10. That makes sense. Once they hit 10, the next stop's 100. What?
Right.
Bro, the next stop is literally 11. It's $11 million, and like not fucking this up, you know? Like, and so like people need to understand like this is. I think the hardest business to build is e-commerce because of the cash constraints, and not because it's hard. It's actually easy to get it popping, but like to like make it work like substantially, that's the issue. And there's levels, there's things, and so I think that a lot of these people that are, you know, in the $3 to $10 million range need to look at like, what else can I create? Can I aggregate? Can I be a flipper, right? Because everyone, you know, then you have this whole other group of people that are like, man, I'm changing the world. You run a supplement company that sells carnivore stuff, and it's really good, and it is helping people, but like it's not Uber, right? Like you're not changing the way like people like connect and communicate. It's not Google. Like we make physical products, and at one point these things will become a logical commodity. And so I think it's your responsibility to, you know, we get lost. We go from not having money or an idea to like building something, and then we really kind of like tell ourselves this story because frankly we have a job and we haven't really thought about, we stopped thinking about ourselves. So we think like the business has to do 50 million, whatever million. I had a guy who lost a $10 million business because of a partnership, tried to get him to sell, didn't work out. The business went to zero. I was like, what do you pay yourself in that business? I was paying myself like 250, you know, but I want to build another $100 million business. I was like, why don't you build a business where you can make $500,000 or $1 million first? You know, like think about you a little bit more than you think about all these like crazy things. It's an excuse to not sit down and think like, what do I want with my life? What does my day look like? What is my like time allocation to the team, to myself, to my family, or to the things that I enjoy if I don't have a family or whatever the case, right? Like we get lost in social media and like everything has to be big, you know. Warby Parker sold for 100, like Black Rifle Coffee is publicly traded, so I'm going to do the same. Most likely you're
Yeah.
not. Like, why don't you? And do you have to? Is this person happy? Like, the odds of people hitting 100 millions and billions are way less than hitting tens and selling. You know what I mean? And that's, I think, more like, let's just
Totally.
get more realistic and go like phase one and then phase two and phase three. You know what I mean? Where I'm at today is nowhere near, like, I never thought in the world that I could get to a place where, by 2026 our brokerage, we want to do $1 billion in sales. Is that outlandish?
Yeah.
Yeah, like 2 years ago I would have said it, but if this year we're going to do 300 or 350, next year we could do 600, and then even by 2028
Then
the
you're there.
number starts to
Yeah.
look real, but like, you start
Yeah.
to graduate your thoughts, and your season changes as well.
I mean, all of that resonates like so much with me. And I kind of tell this short story. It's like when I was a trader at Lehman Brothers for 10 years. Like, that is a fucking grind, dude. And you're just working for the man, and that's it. And like, I read 4 Hour Work Week, and I read like the Rework and Remote, like the 37 Signals books. And they're like extolling the virtues of lifestyle businesses and all of these questions that you're asking, right? It's like, how do I set my life up how I want it to be set up? And I also was like, I was drawn to that, and I was drawn to running profitable businesses also. And like, only very, very recently, when I like identified this sort of very quick attack that we could do to try to like go unicorn status, did I gravitate away from that. I was like clipping a lot of cash and watching some of my buddies who were just spinning their wheels on this VC, sort of thing or whatever, wondering why, you know what I mean? Like, and I think the dream scenario is if you can do what you're saying and then get to a position like I was in the fall, where it's like, man, I have so much dry powder if something comes along that I really want to go for. Like, dude, we hired 25 people between November 1st and November 15th. By December 31st, our annual recurring revenue had grown more than their salaries while we were training them, right? So like, they're not even contributing yet. Like, what happens when they start adding to sales? We're all revenue employees, right? So like, if you can have that position that you described, and you get better and better at building products, and ultimately you have a product that is good enough where it gets you in a position to where like you're so financially strong that you can do anything that you want, then I think when this like Warby like opportunity comes along, you can do it and you don't have that downside risk. Like, if this stops working for us, it's like, we just sort of cut what we added on,
Right.
and like we're back at the same place. It's not that I think it will. And then there's like, the season of my life has changed as well, because now I can look at a spreadsheet and I can believe that we can grow 300% next year, which I've never done in my life, from the highest number I've ever been at, right? It's kind of like what you're saying. It's like, it sounded nuts 3 months
Right.
ago, but like now I accept it as a foregone conclusion, and so do all of the people that are working for us,
I
right?
think a few things, and I get it. Like, we've spent like almost $1.1 million on domains, and some of them haven't even launched, but we know exactly what we're doing with it, right? Because it's the season. I think two things. One, I think that lifestyle businesses are like, they got looked at wrong, passive income, all that kind of stuff. I don't think that, I'm terrified of lifestyle businesses, because like, then you built a lifestyle, and if something goes wrong, you don't have much more from it, right? So like, it could go away and now you're screwed. And
Yeah.
like, a lot of times in those lifestyle businesses or coaching, consulting, little things like that, like, if you're not there, like, the business doesn't move without you. I think it's better
Yeah.
to build a business that satisfies and creates your lifestyle. That I will
Yes.
invest in stuff and lose money and like make it work first, so then that
Yeah.
thing is doing something for me. It can't be the reverse. I'd rather do that
Yeah.
forever. It doesn't have to be unicorns, and because the structure, it might one day become that, right? But what I
Right.
do know is that this is fulfilling the yearly and longer term goal that I have, and that's why I'm building this thing. And then with entrepreneurs, instead of trying to go like so rocket ship, I really feel like if every year, not just financially, but if every year you're not changing, you're stuck. Like, if every year you're doing the same thing and you
Right.
make more money, but you're still in the same spot, like with your brand, and you're this and that, like, that's also scary, because it means you're not changing. That means you're a big fish in a micro pond. I always want to be a minnow that can grow into being a whale and then find a bigger ocean.
Yep. I love that. I love that. So can we turn the conversation to like to valuation? So just from the SaaS side, right? There's like these hurdles that you cross where you all of a sudden are considered de-risked and you're gaining more revenue multiple or whatever. And there's asterisks, of course. Every situation's like different. But like for instance, like you're very risky if you're 5 million a year in SaaS. I mean, there was some crazy stuff going on with like, you know, minority, you know, VC preferred type things last year. But like, just let's talk about like selling a business, right? Like the you will get like twice the revenue multiple at 20 million, over 20 million than you would at 5 million for a SaaS company. Is there sort of like levels like that in eComm, or is it like more how the business is
No,
structured?
there's levels
Like,
like
do you
there's
have,
levels on everything. So for an agency, right? If you're doing $1 or $2 million EBITDA, you're better off keeping that business and just cash cowing because it pays you so well, right?
yeah,
If you're hitting
yeah,
the 5 million EBITDA, you go from like selling at 1.5 to 2.5, maybe three. Three's a stretch, to like 4.55, right? If you're hitting 8
yeah,
million in EBITDA, you can sell for like 8 to 10 times, right?
that's
But
great.
like you have you're making for 8 to 10 million EBITDA on an agency. You have a massive organization. You have an HR company.
Right.
Like that's a lot. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It
Yeah. Yeah.
with
Yeah. It's a
Yeah,
machine.
right, right.
It's not a
No,
guy.
no, no. It's a whole
Right.
thing, and so that's going to take you a long time, right? With ecom, right? Right now, if you're in one, like we just had a deal. Gonna There's no names or whatever the case, but it did about. I'll change a little bit of the EBITDA. It did like let's just call it 3.5, and they offered 21 million. That's a 7 times, right? And then after analyzing it again, they were like, "Hey, we'll give you 18, because you're only on one
Yeah.
channel. You don't. There's a lot of risk here." The people were like, "No, we want at least 21," and so that deal went sour. These people could have made $7 million each, and then now they're working. They're
Yeah.
working, and it was a very difficult brand, like the kind of product. Only a select kind of people are going to buy that. It's not just about the product. Does it fit? Is it a part of a roll up, etc.
Totally.
And so, if you're gonna want a bigger multiple, the EBITDA is one thing, right? The bigger the EBITDA, the more secure, so the bigger the multiple. But does it have multiple channels? Do you have a recurring revenue? How much of that is subscription that you have inside of that, right? Like what guarantees that you have? Like, do you have a community? How big is that email list? Have you talked to, or are you in talks with anybody as far as like retail? Do you also have an Amazon? Are you in other channels, kind of like Birchbox, or like Chewy, depending all those other platforms? Are you also on those platforms? What does the team look like? Is it mostly all outsourced? Do you have products in house, or are you kind of still like doing a little bit of like white labeling here and there and drop shipping this, and so the majority is here? Do you have everything else? Like we have company that's about to sell. They have a whole other side that is subscription, but it comes with like coaching because it's a fitness supplement brand, and so that actually helped, and it didn't help because they don't want to take on that side because they don't know it. But that's what really creates the subscription. So it kind of like flattened out the valuation. So the more channels, the more EBITDA, and the more SOPs. Also something that'll help you kind of like move the ball faster is if you kind of have your accounting in order. 90% of people don't, right? So if you
Yeah.
have a real team, a controller, CFO, and you run your books like you're going to be audited, it'll save you 6 months of or 3 months of like crazy due diligence, because these people are going to come in and do due diligence and audit you just like they were the IRS, because they want to know where everything's going, right? And so the faster they can get that done, the faster that you can get this thing sold.
Yeah. I had, I got connected with this PE guy that I've been talking to a little bit, just to try to prepare for some big secondary in a year and a half or whatever. Not really working with him yet, but like, he was like, man, there was this one company that we bought one time where it's like they could read our mind. Like every single thing that we asked for, they were like, oh, we have that spreadsheet already. Oh, we have that spreadsheet ready. Oh, we
Yeah.
have that. You know what I mean? And like thinking about the process that I went through, we spent 6 months on it. It was a disaster. Like we had none of that. And like, it was like we were so far
It gives you so
from
much
what you're
confidence.
describing. Like,
It gives that.
yeah. It was like, it is an indescribable pain in the ass to try to like gin it up as quickly as possible at the last minute.
Right.
So yeah, I think that's fantastic.
And that
Fantastic
gives
advice.
that little slip up gives the buyers opportunity to essentially have you slow down. And you're not on ramp up. You're in like fix mode, and so your numbers by the time you fixed it, let's say it's a couple months, they're trending down. They're like, ooh, we're a little scared, so we're gonna drop
Right.
a percentage or a point or whatever the case, right? And like sometimes it's actually like a play that people kind of like run, and people don't know that, right? Because they're not like in the mix of buying and selling and things like that.
Right. Yeah, that's interesting. So are there like, I mean, there's just so many variables with these e-com companies, but like, are there like I mentioned, there was a hurdle at like maybe 10 or 20 million in SaaS, like for revenue. Is there like, at 5 EBITDA, then you'll get a little more credit. At 10,
You're getting a lot. Yeah.
Like,
It basically 3, you're getting the least, right? 5, you're getting a lot more. You also usually have subscription. If you're in the 8 to 10s, like you're starting usually in like the 6 to 8s, maybe even 9s, right? Like right now, 9's probably not as aggressive, but 6 to 8's happening, right? 6 would be a low ball offer. Usually 7 and 8 is pretty normal, right? And the bigger the EBITDA, the more you can get away with like, nah, this is what this thing is worth, right? When it's the lower the EBITDA, that's when people are like, there's a lot of wiggle room and opportunity inside of that.
Yeah. And then how would you think about as an operator trading EBITDA for growth rate in this world?
Man, it depends what the goals of the company are, because sometimes you can't have both, right? Unless you hit certain points, right? But like if you're going for
what are the certain points?
If you're going for it depends if you want to, like, we have a company right now that's 3 different ones, but we're rolling them up for another company, right? And they have to have a certain amount of EBITDA for them to want it. So they're cutting staff, they're cutting certain ads. It's 80-20. They're just going for that 20% and sticking in there. Their gross is going down, but their EBITDA is actually increasing on all of these brands. That is that goal, right? There's some that are like, no, we're just going to go moon rocket, and we're trying to like spend everything that we possibly have into new SKUs, new channels, new this, new that, and that's that's because they want to get to this trajectory and then start to even out or whatever the case, right? And it might be the kind of brand, like if we were about to sell a food company that did kind of subscription meals, there's no margin in that, so they're like, that's going to be sold on a gross, so they don't care about EBITDA. They're just going to go balls to the wall. But the people that we're working with, they either want good EBITDA because they're trying to do a roll up of these, or they want good EBITDA because they're basically optimizing and fixing it, and they're selling it to somebody else, right? There's levels to this shit. Like we pick them up from like the small guys, then we sell them to like the medium guys, and then they sell it to the big guys, and the big guys oftentimes sell it to like somebody, the big publicly traded companies, just to like make an announcement that they scoop something up and then shut it down, or just to get the IP, or just to get some people on staff. But like, it's crazy. Like sometimes a lot of these things, like there's all this effort, and then you see that it goes all the way to the top, and like they just shut it down because they didn't want the competition, or they didn't want someone like be as agile as these people, or they try to make it work and they give it like 2-3 months and it doesn't work. They just shut it down because the amount of revenue that those companies have.
Yeah. So what is so like another thing Ryan McBenzie said was during Greats, he like learned all this stuff that he hated about the shoe business, and it led him to create this framework that he wrote on a whiteboard, and then he looked at it for 2 years, and then he was on the beach on vacation, and he came up with the shower head. And I forget what the 3 things were, but it was like, it has to be a habit, something people use every day. It has to not be exposed to trend, right? And then it has to either do with vanity, or he didn't say addiction, but like something to that effect, right? Like, yeah, vanity or dopamine or something like that. So like this shower, his skin was drying out, and like whatever, they made the shower head, right? Good story. But like that, he's like, and they have a nice subscription model to it. Like he's doing really well with sort of scaling exponentially, bootstrapped or whatever. and then he's in this position where he's thinking, this is it was more about the framework than the product, right? Like he's like, I built the business and the product happened to stick, or I had a strategy for a business and this product happened to work for it. You know what I mean? So like, do you have anything? My question was going to be like, what is your perfect business if you were to just start something now to sell it in 3 to 5 years or something? Are there characteristics you would be going for that in any market buyers are going to fucking love? Like, how would you be setting it up?
It has to have leverage. It has to be able to scale quickly. We're talking anything, right? It doesn't have to be eComm.
I mean, the audience is eComm,
Okay.
so I think it's kind of
so if it's eComm, I would go more with what I can scale quickly. So I've sold a few supplement companies. I would create a lifestyle. I would either create something that's a lifestyle brand, like clothing or something like that, because you can build a community and the community can create that growth for you, right? You can leverage influencers and things like that. I would do some sort of consumable, like supplements or something like that as well. Targeting women, not men, because men have no loyalty and women do. And women are more on the health and wellness kick than men. Women normally buy things for the guy. The guy buys pre-workouts and things that honestly have no margin. And if it's got a cool looking new color or flavor, they'll buy the next one. They have no loyalty to things like that. I like consumable. I like community. And I like basically women as like my 3 big things, because the majority, every time we sell a business, I always say, like, I'm sure that your demographic is 60 or so % women that shop at Target and Nordstrom and have a household medium income of $70,000 to $100,000. They're always like, whoa, dude, that's exactly it. That's Facebook. So like, you know what I mean? Like, who we're hitting. That's a lot of the people on YouTube. Like, that's who you're gonna hit. So just stop trying to make like immense out of it. Focus on the women for the most part, because you can expand to those things a lot. They're also more apt to be inside of a community. They're also more apt to, fall in love with a woman if you create influencer stuff and things like that. They were more likely to, engage in all of these things. If I was bootstrapping, right? If I went out and got funding, I would have to create something that is an outlier, right? Like Josh and I were thinking, we didn't do this, but we were looking at something that we could invest like a couple million on eComm, and we were like, all right, we'll make liquid IV, but for pets, right? Something that's like you cure them.
Wild.
Yeah, it has to be, because it can't be like, just something normal. It has to be something that's game-changing, revolutionary, doesn't exist. You're creating almost a category, because if not, you're just fighting with anybody on anything, right? So the reality is, how do I make this more about us? And it's brand, and it's really copywriting, because brand gets you to a point. But I mean, if you are a great direct response marketer and you have a great product, then you can use that to scale to 10 million alone. You know what I mean? The problem is it's weird. Like the direct response guys aren't necessarily direct to consumer. Direct consumer is a channel that like it's Shopify. It's like buying ads there. But the direct response guys, pages and everything, or all these long form, all that kind of stuff, it's totally different. But this guy that just needs to know how to say the words, and this person needs to create more of the brand. The answer now is like blending both and hiring some people from here and some people from there, and that's what makes the best opportunity. I'd also, one of the things now, it has to be an average order value over $100, or I wouldn't do it. I would really want to be into like 150s. If I can be in the 150 AOV, targeting women with some sort of consumable or repeatable supplement subscription, those are things that I would focus on first.
How important is gross margin to you?
Huh?
How important is gross margin, like, COGS being low or whatever?
It's extremely important in eComm, man. Like,
because it's like
you're running.
This is so cash. Cash intensive.
In eCommerce, it's one of the most important things. I mean, we're working with a company right now. They're American made. I was like, dude, I love this. And she's like, this is what makes us. I was like, no, it's not. Like 3% of people are actually watching, and they really appreciate it. We can save 28% if we go to China, and we can save another. We found out suppliers in Mexico. We can save 33 if we go to Mexico. What we're not doing right now is making any money because you want to be made in America. If you want to be made in America, just donate more money to America or something. But like this is impossible. This margin isn't going to work on the average order and everything that we're spending. This cogs are like they're just destroying us, right? And so that in eComm, I think is one of the most important things because it's how you live or die.
And then what? So, sort of flipping back to our previous conversation about EBITDA, like, are people with a 10 million EBITDA business, are they distributing themselves $10 million? Like, are these guys just crushing it?
No.
No.
I mean, it also depends. I have friends that they're past 10 million EBITDA, and they are printing money. But it depends. If that, at that point, that can be a lifestyle business, right? So you might be like ripping a lot. And if you look at it like in this internet marketing world, those guys are probably taking outlandish 7-figure distributions, maybe even quarterly, or at least like 2 times a year, and their salary is probably something relaxed, right? But if you're trying to sell to a bigger company, you're probably treating it like a business. You probably hired C-levels. You're probably moving into different channels and stuff like that. It all really goes back to the operator, right? Like where that person comes from. And like I came from media buying, direct response, and I've moved into brand and more corporate and the startups, the venture backed, like all those things. They're 2 different people. They're 2 different people. I think slowly they're realizing that like they're both right.
They need each other.
Yeah, but like there's also like an ego of like, oh, you're stupid. Like, oh, you guys waste money. Like if you can just marry it, like you can build machines. And I think that's what like a company like our friends from VShred, like that's what they've done. They married it. They use direct response and brand, and they're crushing life.
Totally. Man, this has been fantastic. That was kind of like everything that I wanted to know about what's going on in there.
It's like,
so like how is volume lower than last year by a substantial amount? Because there's this like distance. Is it like the Austin housing market? Like the prices aren't lower because like the sellers want high prices, but the buyers are lower because of financing or whatever.
It's actually, so we have a ton of buyers, and we are getting sellers more and more and more, right? Like there's no shortage. And I can't say to like what it was before because I wasn't at this level involved. I helped a couple of companies sell by like advising and like connecting them to people, but like I wasn't in this mix. And to me, I feel like it's crazy because I feel like the ego has dropped a little, and they're like, I want to sell. Like this is kicking my ass, even if it's doing well. And they're like, dude, I want this money. There's a time, and these guys have been saving up, and they're like, we're scooping. You know what I mean? And their pockets are much bigger than what they're picking things up for. They've waited for a while. It's a great opportunity. I mean, in my opinion, on the faces of people, there's some people that we've been selling their companies, and I'm like, listen, you just need to build a factory of this, like. Build, sell, get money, do it again, and be a flipper, of 1 to 3, $5 million EBITDA businesses. If you can make it that fast, even better if you can just do roll-ups on stuff like that. Then there's the bigger people that are like, no, I want to get this thing to 8 to 10, and then after that, usually they're investing or they're building something where they're investing in people, or they get advisories and they're in that kind of position, right? But it really has, the sellers have become more aware of what they actually want. Instead of like what matters to like everybody in a like group or event or whatever the case, or on TV, social media, and so there's a lot more understanding and like desire to optimize things for sale and for scale, right? And then there's the group that just always is looking for more growth, that doesn't get it, the ego or whatever the case. They have a vision that they can't lose, that they're trying to get funding right now, which is very hard in e-commerce right now. To just get funding, because we're not investing in anything but our own companies. We're not investing in, especially we're not investing in anything e-commerce.
Right. Well, it's an interesting environment. I wonder how long it's going to take to swing all the way back to the other side.
It's weird, man. Because you hear that you're in a recession. You hear all these things. Shopify went massively down, but as it should have, right? Like those numbers that spiked in Corona were fake. And so now it's really stable. You have a stable If you look at it in 2017, you look at it in 2023, it's about stable. That little pocket of like, what's happening? That's what like spiked it, and people are like, that's the normal, right? I think people need to make more time to read and less time to watch, right? Like read what's really happening in your sector, in your markets. Read like where things were before and how they're stable now. Read like, everyone looks at brands and they're like, oh, Shopify's coming back. What does this say about the small business? Well, it can say so much because the stock, everyone looks at the stock of Shopify and they're like, oh man, all these small businesses are crushing. What they don't realize is they just picked up Supreme. They do Kylie Jenner. I mean, there's billion dollar companies, and they're taking a lot of BigCommerce and WooCommerce enterprise companies and even headless ones, and they're now making a goal to go out and pick up like really big enterprise companies. So that's what's going to give it the spike. So you need to figure out where you land in the sector, because that's a publicly traded company that's going for enterprise now. You're what started it and supported it, but you're not who they focus on anymore. So where do you need to be in the pocket? What are the tools that are happening over there? What's happening in your landscape specifically? If you're just getting started, if you're a drop shipper, if you're in the D2C, like $1 to $10 million companies, like, are you hanging out with these people? What is that? Because that's the market that matters, right? Because economically, let's just say we're in a recession. I bet you your friends aren't, and they'll never even feel it, right? It's opportunistic.
Right.
But to another group, to be, we're totally in a recession. Life is the worst thing ever, and we all live in the same place. And so it's about looking at the sector that you're in and studying the sector that you're in today to see how you can optimize or leverage that, not looking at the macroeconomic of everything, because it doesn't really pertain to you.
Totally. I couldn't agree more. I don't feel like I'm in a recession.
Right. No, I'm stoked.
everything I put out is like, dude, like, I mean, I've never seen anything like
people
this.
are printing money in our world, right? But like, we're technically in a recession.
It's so wild. Yeah, totally. So another question is like, let's say I want to sell my eComm business in 2 years. Like, when do I need to start committing some mind share and time?
I would say now. So a lot of people that come to Powerhouse now want to sell, and then we look at it and we're like, no one's going to buy this. What you want? We should do a 2-year plan and try to optimize this for 24 months to get it looking right to sell. And so I think if you want to sell for your best opportunity, it makes sense to start acting like that, and like maybe work with us or work with another company that'll be like, hey, in this next 24 months, this is what needs to happen for that to happen, not for just to make more money or whatever the case, for you to be able to sell this company. Like, what category is it? What's the EBITDA? What's everything looking like? What are you going to do with the team members? All that kind of stuff. It needs to start now, like cleaning up the books, all these things, right? And so I think that the sooner the better. And I think that that's exactly the kind of mentality that people should have. Like, what's my intention? You're not just going to hit up. I mean, some people have businesses and they're like, hey, I'm kind of burnt out, or it's going where it's going, and we can fix it in 6 months. But if you want to maximize it, if you're not really thinking about it and you think there's more juice left to squeeze on an opportunity to get a bigger valuation, it's 12 to 24 months.
Yeah, sweet. I mean, that's just amazing. Thank you for all of that feedback. I also have this view about my business. It's like, I might as well build it to sell, because then if I don't want to sell it, who gives a shit?
You right? For sure should build this thing to sell, because you're going to buy an iPhone.
Because it's like the worst case scenario is you have this asset that you intentionally created that buyers are going to want.
Yeah.
And then you can keep it if you want, if you're feeling called by the
a lot of times, people say like build a business that you don't want to get rid of. And I think that's cool, but I don't think that pertains to e-commerce. Build a business that someone wants to like buy ASAP and get rid of it. Dude, I'll leave you with this, because I really try to stress to entrepreneurs, like, don't, I want you to make 100 million, all that. I get it. But we helped the company go from 300,000 a month, right? So 3.6 million a year. The next year we did $40 million. And I had him, Target wanted him, Walmart wanted him. He said no to both. And then I had someone want to buy it, and I was like, we need to get rid of it. And he's like, brother, you don't get it. We're going to $1 billion. And I told him, I was like, brother, we're not going to 42 million next year. We hit this cap. It's the time. It could have best peak.
Yeah.
It was the most beautiful thing that you could have done. He probably could have got $40 million
Yeah.
for that business. That business is now doing $500,000 a month.
Jeez.
Right. You never don't.
Wow.
I have another guy
Timing,
that
right?
$50 million business.
Yeah.
Same thing. Get whenever you
It's
think
like you
this
have
is
to
the hottest shit in
sell.
the world, go.
Yeah, totally. And like you have to sell when there is visible trajectory left, right? Like, because
Yeah.
the buyer is seeing
You
the same
have
thing
to-
you are, right? Like you got to leave chips on the
When you
table,
want to
right? Like,
flex, yeah, when you want to flex and be conceited and brag about this thing, that's the time you got to get rid of
yeah,
it. Like, go, be
Totally.
gone, be happy. So
totally. Yeah, that's human psychology.
yeah,
Maybe I need to sell my thing right now.
I think you still got a little bit left on this one.
Yeah, our penetration is just so low in this world.
Yeah.
So, but maybe in a
Yeah,
year
we'll
or something.
talk maybe in a year.
Cool. Cool. So the final 5. What's your favorite book?
Outwitting the Devil.
Outwitting. Oh, it's a negotiation
It's
book.
Napoleon Hill. It's the first book. He basically talks like himself, and then he talks like the devil. And then my second favorite book is Leaders Create Leaders,
Outwitting,
or no, Leaders Eat Last.
Outwitting the Devil, and then Leaders Eat Last.
Yeah, 2 favorite books.
I'm gonna grab those too. And then, is there somebody you're following that you think is like worthwhile for kind of the listeners?
Dude, I buy a lot of Harvard Business Reviews, and I read that.
Cool. Sweet. And relationship status. I mean, I know
I've been married for 15 years. Yeah.
There you go. Where do you live?
Orlando. Got 2 beautiful daughters, and I leave early a lot of times at work so I can go watch them go be cheerleaders because I'm a cheer dad.
Amazing.
Yeah.
What's the favorite vacation you've ever been on?
Favorite what?
Vacation you've ever been on?
Man. Favorite vacation that I've been on would probably be Isla Mujeres, Mexico. It was a trip I did with my family. It was awesome. We rented a catamaran and a yacht. It was best time.
Awesome. That sounds amazing.
Yeah.
Dude, this insight has been incredible. I seriously think it's going to get a lot of traction.
Thanks for having me, man.
In my little community that I'm building. Great fun, and maybe we'll regroup in 6 months or a year or something, see how this is all changing.
100%, bro. Anytime. Thanks for having me.
Sweet.
All right,
Take
see
care.
ya.